It's the 2009 Iowa High School Football Preview Show. Hi again, everyone. This is B.J. Shaban, joined, of course, by Dave Bingham of the Blitz Extra, as we are going to break down 5 classes here in this first hour with the 8-man game, A, 1A, 2A, and 3A. Dave, last year you couldn't argue with the season that we had of high school football in 2008. What a finish in getting to the championship.
Well, and I just really, for the first time you and I got together and we did this, why they had us, I don't know, but we had a great time. And then it's funny because we took part of the show that we did, put on the website, on our website, and you go back and you watch it, we were pretty good. I thought we did a nice job. I don't know if we'll be able, I don't know how much study and research we did last year, but if we can do as well as we did last year, I mean, it's not about predictions, it's about the passion for high school football, but we did a nice job, and they did a nice job with the shows, so it's fun to go back and watch those, but I can't believe it's here. And when you called me, I was like, wow, really? And then now that we're doing it, I think we're doing it actually probably later than we were doing it last year. Why haven't we been studying?
Well, we got more information for this year's show, including a breakdown of the 8-man game, and this is usually a tough class to take a look at because of players coming back. There aren't as many to choose from. However, Lennox has been the king over the last 5 years. You
know, when you look at Lennox, too, and BJ, when we think about the 8-man class from the start of it, and I think I mentioned this a little bit last year, when you talk about the very first 8-man game all the way through and who was the power, Arweva Westside and Adair Casey, and there's just so many things building. It was Elkhorn Kimballton, by the way, in that first championship. But you watch, I don't know why I said Arweva Westside, I think because they're pretty good right now. But you could see Adair Casey's always still there. Now, there's just been not a dominant force. And what we found is I think whoever gets the athletes, everybody's playing a good brand of football. And so Lennox, since they've moved into this class, they can thump you. And I think what's neat is, as we've seen the expanded playoffs, some things have changed. And I think the more traditional programs that maybe lose a kid here and there have a kid, whether it's a freshman, sophomore, that's ready to play. And Coach Dukes and those kids, nobody told them they were going to lose last year. I was sitting there, as we're watching the games, it's like, you know what? Everybody, here thinks Stanton, everybody here thinks, Armstrong Ringstead. But the thing is, nobody told Coach Dukes and the Tigers, and I think that's what was cool. So, that said, we've seen these. Remember Central Fenton? I mean, when you see these runs, and now that we're deeper in the playoffs, I think even the traditional teams, like Lennox, are going to be hard to deal with.
Well, let's take a look at some of those teams. They are the semi-tough teams that we figure have a great shot at the Dome. Armstrong Ringstead, of course, the before-mentioned Lennox. Stanton you put in there, also with Cumberland, Anita Messina.
It's kind of weird, BJ, when we look at that. I looked at your rankings, and then I sent in these concepts. Semi-tough means it's going to be hard to keep them from getting to the semi. And that doesn't make any sense when you look at the way it's probably going to be bracketed out. I mean, those Cam and those 3 teams from Southwest Iowa probably won't all be able to get there. So from that standpoint, it's difficult. I think Lennox is going to be a hard team to beat again. They lost some good kids, but they've got some great. Armstrong Ringstead has the best fantasy football player in 8-man football, don't we agree? And Tyler Tundrum, and he's a great kid. But those 4 teams. And you've got like Cam. I mean, they're one of those teams, too, that now that they've went to 8-man, you got to watch. And it seems like they've got a lot of kids coming back.
We take a look at some of the Dome contenders, too, as well. These are teams that we feel are going to be very competitive. And you take a look at the top 2, Northeast Hamilton and Corwith Wesley Laverne. They're both out of District 3. That's going to be one of the most competitive districts, I think, in the 8-man game.
Isn't it fun each week to watch games and you're like, CWL, Cornwood, Wesley, Beeman, Conrad, Lidsky. You always try to remember the towns because I love driving through the state. And they kind of showed up in the Dome last year and really was a nice outfit. So that is cool because you've got a team that is on the verge of becoming an 8-man threat. And then you've got Northeast Hamilton, Blitzburg. They've got the state championship. Blairsburg, but we call it Blitzburg. But yeah, they've got the state championship, and I think because of their tradition, I think that the Trojans, I believe it's the Trojans. My memory serves me right. Yeah. Well, and there's my Arweva Westside was in there too.
Yeah, you take a look at Arweva, and then North Central Kossuth, a team that really has come together because North Kossuth over the years has always had a very talented pool of athletes. Central of Fenton, hit or miss here or there throughout the year. Now with the 2 schools combined, I mean, Dave, this is a team that I think really has a great shot at the Dome this year.
Oh, yeah, and on the verge last year, playoff worthy, and I just really keep your eye on that because that tradition's there. You can't take that away. And those Central Fenton teams, those 2 years, they weren't just good. They were dominant good. I mean, they really understood what was going on. And heck, they onside kicked every time. They didn't give it. I mean, they didn't give a darn whether or not you got the ball and where you got it. Here we go. If we get it, we're gonna. It was fun to watch. So yeah.
Other 8-man teams we've got to keep an eye on are going to be the Dome Busters. These are teams that, Dave, you think have a shot at upsetting somebody along the way, and maybe
them that I have there for sentimental reasons, and then Central City I think is legit. I mean, they really came on strong, and that's a program that you're trying to say, hey, it's been fun to watch them grow. But we live in the community of Ankeny, so I have to drive a certain way all the time to drop my kids off. And I always see the Ankeny Christian kids out practicing. And a couple of days last year, I just pull over and watch what they're doing. You know, I had a chance to go up to Parkersburg yesterday and watch. I think sometimes to watch the practice, and you can tell what's going on. And I think, wow, they do a pretty good job for 8-man. I've been to some practices where I'm like, what's going on here? Is somebody going to... So I have a sentimental, you know, when you watch those kids, you're like, hey, they're doing something. So I like Ankeny, and I think that's something that can build, especially in that community where football is important. Obviously, Melcher, you know, I got my cousin, Robert Bingham. I think he's been quarterback there now 45, 50 years. It seems like there's been but I'm looking for great things out of them, and I think it's going to be a fun year to watch Melcher Dallas. They're in a tough district, and there's some other good teams there, but you know, Twin Cedars and some of those other schools. But I don't know. Is there anything I missed? I mean, because you know, you've had a pretty good list yourself.
Well, I like Grandview Park Baptist too. Last year was a slow year.
Great
last year
field.
for them. Tremendous field in the metro area. And the one thing that was about them is the fact that, well, they had success 2 years ago. Last year they stumbled a little bit. This year they got a lot of returnees back. They could also be a team in the 8-man game that could contend with what they have returning back. And Dave, a couple of other schools to think about too is that you never know in the 8-man game.
Oh, you don't. I really don't. That's what we talked about with like Central City and CWL. You're like, what the heck? They just kept. So I think 8-man, and we talked about this last year a little bit. I wasn't too excited about it when it first came out. I don't know what your take was on it, but I think the strength of our state of Iowa is our communities, and we lose a little bit of that when it's Central Fenton. You know, but even though it was even when we combine schools, but we still have schools coming back, and we get to remember those names. And then there's that pride in the school. And so you know, Lennox still has a football program, and they're still, that's why I like it. And now that we've watched it, they really compete their butts off.
Lennox, your top team?
Yeah, I got to go. You got to run what you brung, baby. And I think because of the depth of the playoffs and as hard as it gets, I think Lennox is probably the team that I got to beat. Stanton's going to be, I think, awfully good again. But yeah, Armstrong's probably got the most talent, don't you think?
They certainly do with the quarterback that they do have. Well, 8-man, you know, going to be very competitive this year, but another very competitive class is going to be Class A. And when we come back, we'll